All right, we are back for more graphing with circles. Now, in the last video, you saw how everything was already set up to be in that center radius form, but we don't have that here. I ruined it for us, right? This is just in a general form, right? You have x squared, xy, and a constant all on one side of the equation and zeros on the other. Our job, however, is to transform this equation and put it into center radius form. That way we can easily pick up the center and the radius. But in order to do that, we have to complete the square. So the first part of this, though, is just rearranging terms. So we're going to move the 24 to the other side. But while we're doing that, let's go ahead and rearrange our x's. So I'm going to put my x's together. So that's x squared minus x. I'm going to leave a gap here because I need to complete the square in the next step. Plus, let's take care of the y's. So that's y squared minus 6y. And just like the x's, you need to leave a gap so that you can complete the square. And that 24, just like we would do with completing the square, we're going to move that to the other side as a negative 24. All right, now let's think about how we go about completing the square. So for the x's, I'm expecting this to factor as something squared, and I'm expecting something along the same lines for the y with something squared. So one piece at a time, we're going to figure out what's missing. We're going to put those pieces in so that we can complete the square. All right, so to complete the square is where we do half of this guy. So half of negative 8 is negative 4. That's what goes inside the factorization. So you divide by 2, and then you square it, and that's what completes the square. So really, I guess we should have put the plus 16 here before we factor, but you know me. If you've seen those videos about completing the square, you know how these guys are just so connected that there's no sense to put this and then try to figure out how it factors. You know how it's going to factor. So you do half of negative 8, and you square that to tell you what that number is. But I added 16 in pink on the left, so I need to add 16 in pink on the right. Otherwise, I've lost balance in my equation. For the y's, do half of negative 6, so that's negative 3. Negative 3 squared is positive 9. So just like we had for the x's in pink, for the y's in blue, if I add 9 on the left, I must add 9 on the right. All right, so everything is factored nicely and neatly on the left. On the right side, we need to combine all of this. Let's add the positives. So 16 and 9 is 25. 25 minus 24 is 1. And now that this is in center radius form, we can easily pick off the center and pick off the radius so that the graph is pretty simple, right? So the center is where you do the opposite of what you see here, so that's positive 4. The opposite of what you see here, which is positive 3. And then this is supposed to be your radius squared. So if r squared equals 1, that means that r is just 1. So radius is 1. So we have enough information to accurately plot and graph our circle, starting with the center at 4, positive 3, which is right here. Use your radius of 1, which means you're going to go up, down, left, and right 1 unit. All right, now we just connect the dots, drawing a nice circle like that. There you go. So we translate from that general form into the center radius form by completing the square. Same thing's going to happen in this next problem. Here we have x squared plus y squared plus 12x plus 4y plus 15 equals 0. So we want to go through that process of completing the square, but before we do that, we need to rearrange our terms. So just like we had above, rearrange to put the x's together. So that's x squared plus 12x. We're going to leave a gap for completing the square. We have plus y squared plus 4y. And again, we're going to leave a gap. And we're moving the 15 to the other side, so that's minus 15. So again, it's rearranging the terms to put the x's together, the y's together, and moving the constant to the other side so that we can now complete the square. All right, so we know this is going to be x and something squared and y something squared. All right, so for the x's, we know it's going to be in here when we complete the square. So it's going to be half of 12. That's a positive 6, which means this was supposed to have been positive 36. So we're adding 36 here, which means we need to add 36 on the right side to maintain balance. And now we go to the y's. To complete the square here, we need to do half of 4, which is 2. And then 2 squared is 4, which, again, we need to maintain balance and add that to the right side. All right, so let's put everything together. We have, let's see, this is positive 40. So 40 minus 15 is 25. So now we have our circle in center radius form. So let's talk about what is the center and what is the radius. All right, so the center, we're going to do the opposite of what we see here. So that's negative 6. Do the opposite of what we see with the y. So that's going to make that negative 2. Your radius. So in that center radius form, your r squared is this constant that's over here. So if r squared is 25, that means that r is the square root of that, so it's just 5. So we have our center, we have our radius. So we put this information together so that we can get our graph. Negative 6, negative 2 is down here. Again, we're using an open circle because that's the center and not an actual solution to this equation. The radius is 5, so I'm going to go up 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Down 5 units. To the left, 5 is going to be kind of tough. So this is 3, 4, 5 is somewhere over there. And 5 units to the right is going to be right there. All right, so now we need to connect the dots. And hopefully we can get a nice, good picture here. Again, that one guy being off the grid is definitely throwing things off. But we can still do it. We're going to be okay. Where am I? There we go. So something kind of like this. If it's not coming out just right, you can always kind of go back over this, make it a little bit thicker. Kind of helps smooth out the edges. So there you go. So when it's in general form, your main job, your main focus is to rewrite it from the general form to the center radius form. And we do that like we did up here by completing the square. So completing the square is always going to be useful. All right, have a good one.